Welcome to the podcast where three longtime friends talk about video games from the average gamer's perspective. My name is Andrew Kimball.
I'm Dylan Wren.
And I'm Aubrey Summer.
And
we are your friendly neighborhood gamers.
Welcome back to the neighborhood. Today, we are going to be diving into the most recent Monster Hunter offering, Monster Hunter Wilds, and to help me with that, since the other two normal co-hosts that normally I get together and talk about games with haven't played this game, we are getting a chance to talk with our good friend Dave from a Top 3 podcast and Tales from the Backlog. Welcome, Dave. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good to see you again, Dylan. And shame on Andrew and Aubrey for not playing Monster Hunter with you, but I'm here. I'm ready to talk about this because I played a bunch of this game too.
Yeah. Well, Aubrey has a good excuse. She just had a baby. But
Okay,
Andrew,
fair enough.
no
Andrew,
excuses
no.
for him. So
Tisk, Andrew.
he's probably going to edit all this out, but you know. You were playing Monster Hunter, and so I reached out and was like, hey, would you like to be on this? And we got to talking about it, and so I thought it would be an interesting podcast too, just because we are both kind of coming into this with a different perspective on Monster Hunter. I know we'll get into our histories with the series a little bit later, but I think it's going to be cool to get your perspective on this, because I'm like a diehard fan at this point, and so I'm looking forward to hearing some of your takes on it too, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I might consider myself more of a diehard fan after playing this game, but we definitely came into this game with much different experiences with the series, for sure.
Yeah. So before we get into it, I want to just kind of explain to listeners what is Monster Hunter, because we are going to be talking about that for the next hour and a half or so. It's probably a good idea, if you're not just skipping this episode, for us to explain that. So it's an action role-playing game published by Capcom, made by Capcom as well, where you as the player take on the role of a hunter who goes out and slays or traps a ton of different monsters. So it got its start back in 2004 on the PlayStation 2. So far, by my count, there have been 8 mainline games. My math could be wrong on that because of the way that they do some of their games. And there have also been numerous expansions and spin-offs. But I want to toss it to you first, Dave, and just kind of be like, action role-playing game is a very generic descriptor that I found on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So how would you describe Monster Hunter?
I would describe Monster Hunter as not a boss rush, but it's like a preparation phase for a boss fight, and then you go fight the boss, and then it gets you into this this is a really sicko game for people who love stats and equipment, and then you get better equipment to have better stats to go prepare to fight another boss. So boiling it all down, you could just say it's like a boss rush game, but there's a lot of downtime in between the fights if you want there to be, but you are basically always getting ready to go fight what in another game would be a boss fight. In this game, that's just what the fights are. They're all boss fights, basically. So action game with a lot of depth, a lot of gear, a lot of stats, and a whole lot of monsters.
Yes. And I think you summed that up perfectly. They throw role-playing in there, and it's a role-playing game in a way, but the progression system is a very different thing than a lot of people when they hear role-playing game. I think they think of okay, so I'm assigning stat points, I'm leveling up, I'm putting points into my strength or into my dex, or we think about other boss battler kind of like other games where the emphasis is on boss battles, which would be some of the like Souls series, which if you're listening to this and you recognize Dave is probably where you've heard him before.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Also, like when people hear role playing, you may think like I'm making narrative decisions or something like, or I'm building a character with a background, and like Monster Hunter is none of that. I mean, we'll
No.
talk about this game's approach to narrative, but the focus is on the action for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And you're not like leveling up. So like the way that you get more powerful is that loop that Dave was talking about, where it is like you kill a monster, you beat like boss number 1, then you can go make new weapons and armor out of boss number 1, which like your health, your strength, none of that is ever getting more powerful. But when you put this armor on, when you use this weapon, you get more powerful. And so, so it's an interesting and way to do it, and one that I don't see. Like I can't really think of other games that like there are bits and pieces of this game that do some things similarly. But in terms of like trying to find another game exactly like this, there aren't really that many out there.
Yeah, there was one that came out like last year or 2 years ago. I can't even remember the name. Yeah, that's what it was. And it like people were talking about it the way that they talk about Monster Hunter. Had a very similar type of loop to it, I think.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, you don't get a lot of like straight up Monster Hunter clones out there.
Yeah. Which is a little surprising to me because it seems like it'd be like now granted, up until I think Monster Hunter World came out, there wasn't necessarily a huge market over in the West for these games.
Right.
But it is interesting that like Wild Hearts and then like Dauntless, which I think is a dead game now, and I think like God Eater is the only other one that I can think of, which is based on like an anime series, I want to say.
Huh.
That does like a similar style to this game.
Yeah, I think like we'll get into why Monster Hunter works, but I think part of the things that go into what makes Monster Hunter good are things that would be really hard to replicate if you don't have the budget or like this long history making this type of game or something like that. Because what we describe may sound simple, fight a monster, get gear, make better gear, fight bigger monster, etc. Like there's a ton of depth in like so many different areas of this whole thing that it's not like, oh, I'll just make a Monster Hunter game. It's not it's not like that.
Yeah. For sure. Like we will definitely get into all of that depth. And so a good place to start getting into that, I think, would be just kind of going over our history with the series. And so Dave, you're the guest, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with Monster Hunter? I know that people have heard me talk about Monster Hunter on various shows already, so...
Yeah. Well, people may not have heard me talk about it because I'm pretty new to the series. So my first Monster Hunter game was Rise, and I'm going to... They picked 2 words that are very similar for these titles for these most recent games. My first one was Rise on the Switch a couple years ago. And I just picked it up because, new Monster Hunter game came out. It sounded fun. I played like 10 minutes of Monster Hunter World over at a friend's house, like, before Rise came out. And I was like, yeah, it looks beautiful, but I never picked it up. I never bought it for myself or anything like that. But Rise looked fun, so I picked that up. And I really, really liked it. But I just did the low rank story stuff. That's it. I played it completely solo. Had a good time with it. I still think it's one of the best looking Switch games. Like it's kind of a miracle that game works as well as it does on the Switch. But it was really good. And then Wilds was day one for me. I liked Rise enough that I was like, I'm going to play Wilds when it comes out. I'm going to play multiplayer with people this time. I was lucky enough to get a review code for the game from Capcom and from 47PR. So that kind of helped too, to give me that push to like, get in there, play some Monster Hunter while it's new, while a bunch of people are playing. But yeah, I'm pretty new to it. So there's going to be some stuff when we'll get into like the meat of this game that some of the longtime fans were a bit upset about or a little complainy about. And I don't have that long time perspective because I'm a Monster Hunter newbie still.
Yeah. And I know, for myself, I started with Monster Hunter World. So I remember watching the trailer for Monster Hunter World and was like, I have to play this game. This looks so cool. And so I picked it up when it came out. I enjoyed it so much that I went back and I picked up like Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate for the 3DS. Eventually, when I got a Switch, I picked up Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate and played through some of that. I haven't beat either of those games just because playing on a 3DS with one control stick is a little... I guess it technically has two things, but like, it's not the ideal way in my mind to play one of these games, right. Even though that's what you had to do for a long time. And then Generations Ultimate, I do enjoy, and I keep meaning to like pick it back up and try to play all the way through it. But also like Dave said, Monster Hunter Rise is on the Switch as well, and that's a fantastic game. So enjoyed that as well. And now, like with Dave, Wilds was a day one for sure for me. I knew that from the second the first trailer came out. I was like, yes, finally, I've been waiting for this. So, been around, I guess, really just one game longer than you. Have played some of the older stuff, but still relative, like, we're talking 8 mainline titles, still relatively a newer Monster Hunter player.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was like kind of a niche thing in the West until World kind of like hit it big. But up until then, there were people that played Monster Hunter and loved that before that, but it wasn't like a big mainstream thing, I don't think, until World.
Yeah. I think, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know World was like wildly successful and blew every previous Monster Hunter game out of the water in terms of like at least Western side of things. I think it was this is a massive series overseas in Japan specifically, to the point where I was reading an article where pretty much so many people just took the day off when Wilds came out over in Japan that it was actually like impacting a lot of stuff over there. So let's we're going to kind of break this into two sections. So the first one is going to be fairly spoiler free, mostly talking about gameplay mechanics, just kind of getting into a lot of the depth that we were talking about earlier. And then we will kind of round it out with a story portion. As Dave has alluded to, I mean, the short version of this is the story is kind of just in service to usher you to the next boss fight. But there will be, for those of you that want to avoid spoilers, we'll call that out when we get there. So I've tried to kind of break it down in this outline in a way that made sense to me at the time. But feel free to like skip around and talk about things as we go through it, Dave.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So the basic loop of Monster Hunter, like Dave was saying earlier, is you decide you want to go hunt a monster. You do some preparations. Sometimes that looks like just going to your tent and collecting all of the stuff that you already have and making sure that your gear looks right. Sometimes it involves going out into the world and needing to collect ingredients to make and craft like healing items and boosts and that sort of thing. But once that preparation stage is done, then you go out, you track down the monster, you fight the monster. Usually, I would say fights, at least for me, seem to last usually like 10 to 20 minutes ish. I would say the average is maybe like 15-ish.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you're playing with people, the monsters get some health buffs. So I think the fights do go faster if you're fighting with people, but it's not like you're going to take down the final boss in 5 minutes or something. Like fighting with 3 other people, the most recent update final boss took me 35 minutes.
Yeah.
So they can be quite long, but most of them I think are like 10, 15-minute fights.
Yeah. Which is something that is a bit newer. I think they started that in Rise, where they emphasized a little bit shorter of a fight time, made it easier to kind of get in, get out. Some of this is maybe just my memory of Monster Hunter World, but I feel like I remember the fights in World taking a little bit longer, but that could also be because that was my first game and I was not as good at it. I was a newbie that was bad, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Once you kill the monster, you come back, you see what you can now craft with the body parts that you cut off of the monster, and you upgrade your weapons, upgrade your armor, and then there's usually a bigger, badder monster out there that you need to go hunt down and fight.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like Dave was saying, it sounds on the surface very simple, and
yeah.
And I guess when you break it down, which Monster Hunter is about just hunting monsters, that is kind of the core, but it's so much more than that as well. And like that, it's not just hunt monster, whatever,
Yeah. This is something I wanted to get your take on because you have played some of the games that are further back in the series. Even if you started with World, one of the things that I've heard the most about Wilds, I almost said Rise, but Wilds from longtime players is that they think that this process is too streamlined. Some of them think that. And so you got me thinking about that when you said that this sounds like a really simple thing to do, to prepare, make sure that you have all your items that you need for the fight, and then go out, fight the monster, then come back, do the crafting and stuff. And I just want to for people who haven't played, even Wilds, the one that is supposedly the most streamlined and might be the most streamlined, but is supposedly too streamlined in some people's eyes. Even Wilds is information and menu overload. If you've never played a Monster Hunter game before, you're going to open this up. You're going to go into the camp. You're going to go through these tutorials and be like, what the fuck are all of these menus? There is so much on the screen at all times in these games. So I know you were saying it sounds simple. There's a lot of depth to every component part of this, this game loop in Monster Hunter. The preparation, the fighting, and the crafting and the upgrades and the armor and all of that stuff. There's a ton of depth to all of it. There's so many levels to all of these things. And there's a menu for everything. And I remember the first time I booted Wilds up, even though I had played Rise, I was like, oh my God, what is all of this stuff? It takes a couple hours just to get used to all the menus and menus within menus and different kinds of menus to how to get your quick items out and how to get into your pouch for your extra items and how to do everything. So it's kind of overload when you first start. And I mean, I'm sure maybe you had a little bit easier time with it because you played a lot more Monster Hunter than I have, but it kind of ties into how this all sounds really simple, but it's actually not. It's simple in concept, but it's not that simple to actually jump in and play. It's a big learning curve.
Yes. And they definitely have made some things more streamlined. Mm-hmm. And like you were saying, it may shock people if this is their first Monster Hunter game to be like, if this is streamlined, then what the fuck was it before this? And I think a lot of it is just kind of that in my memory, right, because it's been a while since I played some of these older ones, there are less menus now than there used to be. And that may be a little bit shocking.
Because it's still a nightmare. It's still a nightmare of menus.
Yeah, and depending on which of the weapons that you pick, you might get additional menus or have additional things that you have to worry about, So I do think there are ways to mitigate it, but even things like I think one of the biggest streamlined things in Wilds is that you no longer your preparation hub and where the monster is no longer a separate thing now. And which is a huge part of it. And I think that makes it easier to adjust on the fly. I know in past games, it was kind of like, okay, you had to prep, you had to make sure you were bringing all of the stuff that you wanted to bring, because once you went out in the field, it was like, if you didn't bring something you needed, you were kind of out of luck. You just had to make the best of it and make do, which now they've kind of helped a little bit with the ability to kind of access your like storage inventory at any of the campsites around the map. So that definitely helps a lot, I would say. And things like tracking the monster down have been a lot more streamlined since World.
Right.
Like back in the older games, number one, it wasn't one contiguous world. It was like separate zones that had loading screens in between them.
Yeah.
And then in every game since World, there's been kind of like either the monsters have just appeared on the map for you, or like you had a scout fly trail that kind of like guides you Dead Space style to the monster.
Right.
In previous, like earlier iterations of the game, you had to actually just like find the monster. Like you didn't necessarily know where it was, and then you had to like throw a paintball at it to get it to show up on your map so that you could, like, once it ran away, you could go find it again.
Right.
So things like that have been a lot more streamlined. And I think that's made it easier to jump in if you're fresher, because like you said, there is so much information that you get overloaded. And like that information doesn't stop. Like as you progress through the game, it's one of those things
introducing new things for you.
Exactly.
New weapon upgrade menus and stuff like that. So
yes.
Yeah. You know, you describing some of the streamlining things, I wouldn't mind if they made you commit to your loadout. And, you know, you're going to a place and you needed a cool drink because it's hot, and you didn't bring any cool drinks. Well, then you're just going to have to like make do or die and bring cool drinks next time. Like, I would be okay with that. I would be okay with trying to find the monster on the map, provided that they gave you, you know, instructions for where to look. Like, I think that would have been okay. I think this is all in service of making sure that those little chunks, you know, preparation plus fight plus upgrade, if you think of that as one monster hunting little snack, making sure those individual things are digestible, so that someone who has 30 minutes to play can jump on and feel like they did a fight and all the requisite parts of a fight, and then feel like they did something during their playtime. Like I think that's the goal, and I think that's fine. So I get that stuff. There's parts of it that, like I said, like it doesn't feel streamlined. Like I think they need new like menu designers, new UX people to there's just so much information. But we're getting kind of off of it here. But I'm curious because like you talked about, depending on what weapon you take, that can make the game more or less complicated for you. So what is your weapon of choice?
The weapon that I went through this game with, and that I have kind of found a love for, starting with Monster Hunter World and have kind of played every game since that, has been the Switch Axe. That's always kind of like the first one I go to. And then I branch out to some other weapons I really like. The Insect Glaive. I really like the Charge Blade. And the Longsword is always like a fun one just to like mess around with.
Yeah.
But so I generally start with like Switch Axe, and then as I progress through the game or feel like, okay, because even as like someone who's played a few Monster Hunters, like it takes me some time to get my feet under me in a new game and figure out what's going on. So it's like, okay, let me at least not have to figure out a new weapon, or, you know, like let me just go with the old standard of Switch Axe for me. So, but what about you?
I played all Charge Blade. throughout
Nice.
Monster Hunter Wilds. And I just picked it because I like the versatility of it. Like, for people who haven't played, there's 2 modes to the Charge Blade. One mode is a sword and shield mode, and then the other mode is a big axe or big hammer type thing. It's like the whirligig saw from Bloodborne for all the Bloodborne fans out there. And the way you switch reminds me of switching weapons in Bloodborne, but it's like, one of the things I was going to like kind of praise the game for is we have this list of 14 weapons in the game, and I haven't tried all of them, but I've tried about half of them throughout my time in Rise and then now in Wilds, and all the weapons feel very different from one another.
Yes.
And
Yes.
The play styles are really different, and even though I played some Switch Axe in Rise, and there's like some similarities between the Switch Axe and the Charge Blade, I feel like, but they're really different in practice for how to actually like be good with them. And people told me after I started with the Charge Blade that was a really complex weapon for new players, and it is. There's a lot of stuff you have to manage with that weapon. Whereas if you play with the bow, you got a bow. Try and stay far away from the thing and shoot it with the bow.
Yep.
Same with like the longsword. It's a pretty simple weapon. But like within all of these, they all have different move sets and combos, and some of them have their own meters and their own special ammo, and it's just like kind of remarkable how different all these weapons feel, and how I think it's pretty accepted that like not all the weapons are created equal per se, but none of them suck. Like, all of them are viable. If you want to learn how to be good with them, go for it. You'll be helpful in a fight with anything.
Yes, exactly. Like they've come out and said like, yeah, we're not trying to get parity, like perfect parity with all these weapons, but all of them are going to feel powerful. All of them are going to feel great. And all of them are going to be capable of like killing a monster solo, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I forget if I heard it somewhere or read it somewhere, but the way that but it made so much sense when I saw it was they were talking about the 14 different weapons, and they were like, it's more similar. It's not as like, you know, you think of 14 different weapons in like Bloodborne or something like that, where there are some differences and stuff, but it like you have your your strong attack, you have your regular attack, and you have like they all kind of have the same move combos. Like this is much more similar, they were saying, to if you imagined like a fighting game, and these were all like the 14 weapons were 14 different characters in a fighting game. They all have like kind of separate mechanics. They all have different like combos that you're trying to do. Some of them, like the Switch Axe, have like several like combos that you try to do to like get power-ups going so that then you can do like your bigger ultimate moves. Some of them, like the sword and shield, or the lance or something like that, like a lot of those are maybe a little bit more simple, where it's like, okay, I'm not trying, like it is more about just attack versus, you know, trying to do all of these crazy combos, having different, like the dual blades have like different move states or like modes that you can be in, and all of this kind of stuff. So and I'm glad to hear that you were able to find a weapon that kind of gelled with you, because that's always the thing that I think is one of the hardest parts about getting into Monster Hunter. Like once you get past the menus, right? I think one of the hardest parts about getting into Monster Hunter is like finding a weapon that vibes with you initially to learn the game. Because I've heard from people that have tried like one or two weapons and just kind of bounced off the game. They were, you know, it's like, well, I was, you know, playing light bowgun, and I felt like I wasn't doing, you know, the damage I should be. I felt like I wasn't understanding what I was supposed to be doing with this weapon, and so I just gave up, you know?
Yeah. I think there's a couple parts to that. Like the first part is compared to basically any other action game, Monster Hunter is really slow, and like really your characters move like tanks. Even when you're running, it's like, and you have to put your weapon away to run, so you can't like run and attack, and you know, oh, he's winding up, let me run out of the, like, you can't really do that. Like, you can dodge and all that stuff, but it's a really slow and deliberate game. Even for those of us who love, the Dark Souls series, like, Monster Hunter's slower than Dark Souls a lot of times, the way your character handles. The controls are kind of weird. Like, they feel very unique to this series. And maybe that's just because I'm 40 hours of Charge Blade over here, which is just a really idiosyncratic weapon.
Yes.
But like the cool thing is, like, so Charge Blade's a really complicated weapon, and you have like multiple orders of operation that you're doing in addition to the actual fight, like to power up your weapon and stuff. But also it just has a mode that's a sword and shield. And if the monster's winding up a big attack, just turtle up and block it with the shield and you're okay. So it has like that simple level to it to help you, like, survive until you learn how to use the weapon.
Yeah.
But there are weapons that are like very hard to learn how to use, I think. Like, I mean, if someone starts the game for the first time and they want to use the hunting horn because that sounds cool, and like one of them is a saxophone, you're like, I want to play a saxophone fighting a dragon. It's just going to be hard to like get into that. And then your character controls like a tank, and it's like, it's not the easiest game to just pick up and be like, oh, this feels great, I know how to play this game. Like a lot of action games, that get you into like the basics of fighting really easily. Think of a Bayonetta or something like that. And Monster Hunter is just like, there's so many parts of this that just take a getting used to period before you're going to feel like you're good at it, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And in addition to it, some of the weapons almost need higher level gear to feel really good. Bow is one that I think of, where bow is a very like stamina heavy weapon. And so before you have access to as much like stamina boosting gear or like perks on the gear, really, like armor skills they're called, it could be a little bit tougher to like understand how to play bow just because you're running out of stamina so frequently, right? Same with dual blades, I think, is another one that can get a little bit tough sometimes to play like that because it is so stamina heavy in its requirements. Others, like you were saying, come sort of with that built-in ability to defend yourself a little bit better, which is nice.
Underrated.
yes. Because these are all massive. The smallest thing that you fight is still like at minimum 2 or 3 times your size. Like,
of like the actual fights, not like just the little creatures that are roaming around, and of like the actual things that the story will tell you, oh, you got to go hunt these things. Like the smallest one is still several times bigger than you, like you said. So
having a shield, great time. But the different weapons are fantastic. I think the only one I haven't put a ton of time into is the greatsword and the lance. And those I've played all of them, but greatsword and lance are the ones that I haven't messed around with too much, but I have been trying them a little bit more in Monster Hunter Wilds just because they have made it much easier to like get some weapons in this game with some systems that we'll talk about later, versus previous games where if you wanted to switch weapons like towards the end of the game, it was like, well, okay, now I've got to go back and hunt all of these like low rank monsters so I can craft the base version of the weapon to then upgrade through the tree and get to. So we talked a little bit about the various items that you can use to like heal and enhance your stuff. And so I'd like to talk a little bit just about like the preparation stage specifically.
Yeah.
Because that is, I think it's an easy stage to kind of just gloss over. But it is like an important piece of the sort of Monster Hunter like cycle.
Yeah. I think it gets more important as you play and as the monsters get harder. I think most of the monsters in the low rank story Like, as long as you make sure you bring potions and, bring some antidotes and null berries, which are like your kind of all-purpose status healer item, you're probably fine.
Yeah.
But once you get into like the harder optional fights or like even the stuff in the high rank story, you're going to need to like make sure you cook meals before you fight and make sure that you bring lots of different types of potions and monster specific, because like by the time you get to that point, you probably fought this thing before, you're just fighting a harder version of it now.
Yeah.
And so you're like, Rathians poison me, so I make sure I have antidotes, lots of them. Make sure that, say I'm fighting Rathians that poison you, make sure I bring some armor that's resistant to poison if I can get some. Like, again, in the low rank, those like status or elemental resistances don't matter as much. But once you get to like the higher ranks, and now they're putting in like the new update monsters and stuff, like you got to start thinking about fighting a dragon. I should have something that's resistant to fire because there's going to be some killer fire attacks that come out. So like your preparation starts really simple, and then there's even levels of the preparation phase that I don't mess with at all that I feel like I should. You mentioned like those skills that your armor have and all of the gems that you slot into your weapons and your armor. And like, there's seemingly endless customization. I feel like I hit my upper limit for how much I want to do. And it may end up being a limit on how good I can be in a fight. But like, there's so much preparation that can go into a fight. And then once you get to the hard stuff, like that should go into the fight. Otherwise, like you're going to be like, why is this thing killing me in 2 hits? And it's because like, you're not putting gems in your armor, dude. Like stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like you said, there's the various levels, like, and at the base level, I think it is like bring some potions, bring some like status cleanse. And then as you get up there, it's like sometimes there's like a game you have to play even with like, what am I putting in my pouch? Because your pouch is only so big. It can only hold like, I think 20 or 30 items.
Right.
And
But
so,
the way that you like pull items out of your pouch mid fight is you have to scroll through them on like a timeline.
yes,
One by one. So it's like, oh, I'll just bring everything. But that's not good, because if you're riding around in a fight and this thing's shooting fireballs at you and you're trying to heal a status, you can't be scrolling through 25 different items. So you have to be a little selective.
Yeah, you got to be a little selective. You've got to maybe think about the layout. Like, okay, these are the items I'm probably going to use the most. So let me lay them out next to each other. So instead of scrolling like 15 different things, I can just scroll like, back and forth between these 3. There's also like, and it's less important in this game than it has been in previous titles. But just kind of that idea of like, oh, okay, like this is a harder monster. This is maybe a more extended fight. I may run out of antidotes. So do I put the ingredients to make more antidotes in my pouch so that midway through the fight I can be crafting more antidotes, or I can craft some more, mega potions if I need them or something like that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of sort of like that thinking. I think if you're running 2 of the weapons, I think it's light bowgun and heavy bowgun, you even have to like think about like, okay, now I've got to like craft the ammo and bring the ammo with me.
Yep.
There's a lot that goes into it. And every time that you fight a monster, like it's normally not the first, like you don't have this information going into your first like low rank fight with this monster. But once you fought it before, you have like a little monster journal that you can look at and be like, okay, how strong is this monster's roar? Because roars will stun you if you're too close. And so it's like, how strong is it? Do I want to slot, an earplugs gem into my armor so that I can not have to worry about, dodging this monster's roar, that sort of thing. What kind of elements is this monster strong against, weak against, and there's usually like a little write-up that kind of talks about like, hey, this monster like does this thing, so when it's doing this thing, here's like how you can try to like counteract that. And so there's like there's a monster that like burrows under the ground, and so it's like, hey, when it does that, if you shoot a screamer pod at it, that'll make a loud noise and it'll pop up back up, from under the ground. And so so you can find out a lot of like little stuff like that to kind of help I give you the idea of like, well, here's what I want to bring on this hunt. And
Yeah. I really like that stuff, and I kind of wish that stuff mattered sooner in Monster Hunter Wilds. Like it's you can look at the journal and it's like it's got so much information, and for all the menu complaints that I had earlier, the journals, the way it lays out all of that information is really easy to understand. Because it gives you its resistances to every element, every status effect. What body parts can you chop off to get what component parts? It has a little like entry about how it fits in the environment and the ecology of this monster and stuff. Like there's all that, like a Pokédex entry, but for adults. So like I love Pokemon, but this is it's portrayed as if these are real animals, and you're like reading the Wikipedia page about how it lives with the rest of the monsters in the environment and stuff. And all that stuff is great. And you can look at it and be like, oh, it's weak to fire. And it's like, poison will work sometimes and paralysis will work sometimes. And for a long time, and honestly, mostly to the point where I'm at in the game, it doesn't matter if you bring a fire weapon or not. I've been using a paralysis weapon for most of the game, and it works on basically everything. Unless I look and it's like, don't use paralysis on this thing. But like that almost never happens. So I kind of wish, and maybe this is a monkey's paw thing where I'm like, I wish it mattered more. And then it's like, okay, we're going to make it so you have to grind and make more weapons. I'm not sure I want that, but I kind of would like I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if I bring a fire weapon into a fight against a monster that's weak to fire versus if I bring an electric weapon to that same fight, I don't feel the difference there. It might be the difference of like the fight is 2 minutes shorter, but I don't feel that. I'm like, oh, it's over now. So that's one thing where I'm like, it's cool they give me all this information, and it might matter in 1 year when like DLC or like another like super boss drops, then that will really, really matter. But like at the point we're talking, I don't think it does.
Yeah. And I would agree with you there. I like, there is a lot of this cool stuff that you can kind of just get by without bothering with a certain skill level, and even maybe without that skill, like you said, there's a lot of like, they're pretty generous with their times of like how long you like, because each quest has a time limit technically.
Right.
Most of the time it's like 45 minutes or 50
I've never
minutes
gotten close to failing because of time.
Exactly. And so like, even if you bring a quote unquote suboptimal weapon, like you're still not going to really run up against that time limit pretty much ever. And like you said, like, occasionally some of the monsters are like just fully immune to like paralysis or something like that. But for the most part, there aren't too many just like blanket, I'm immune to this thing type of monsters. Some of that I do think is intentional. Some of that I do think is kind of like that, like, well, we want people to enjoy their Monster Hunter experience. And, some of it is that in older games, maybe that stuff did matter a bit more and made it, like you were saying, a little bit more like frustrating of an experience, because it's like, well, oh shoot, like now I can't beat the monster in time if I don't have this weapon, which means now I have to go spend another 3 hours grinding out the materials to get this weapon. So I think there is some of that. I also think some of that too is from the experience that I've had with Monster Hunter, which admittedly is just like as it was coming out, which is just World, Rise, and now this one. The initial like storyline game and monsters in it do seem to mostly follow this kind of style where it's like you can, as long as you're just like playing the game, you can probably get through most, like you're not really having to think about too much of that. It usually is kind of in all the updates where they start cranking up the difficulty, or adding like variants to the monsters that are available, where it's like, oh, okay, now this thing is going to kill you if you don't bring the right stuff.
Yeah.
And there's usually, like you were alluding to, like an expansion within like a year to 2 years that'll come out where they add like the ultimate rank, which is where you have to actually like pay attention to all of that stuff, or it will be a lot more challenging. And I do think you notice those differences a lot more there. But I think some of it too is just kind of like that like game feedback thing, right? Where I brought a fire weapon, but I'm not necessarily seeing like the monster reacting like, oh shit, you're hitting me with fire. You know, like there's not like that visual feedback sometimes of, you know, it usually, like you said, ends up looking like, oh, I killed the monster 2 minutes faster, but like I'm not going to go back and necessarily try this monster with every type of weapon. So I'm not going to, I'm not keeping a list of like, oh, it really was faster, you know?
Yeah, I think it is kind of that, like, I'm just trusting that it's doing more damage because I'm using the right element. That's kind of what I liked about paralysis as like my element on my weapon, is like you instantly get that feedback of, oh, I was able to paralyze this monster 4 times throughout the fight, which means that I brought something that was helpful. I used a poison weapon on this new update's final boss. And you could see the poison proc and like the numbers tick and all that stuff, and you're like, oh, it's working. This thing that I brought is working. Whereas if I had brought an elemental weapon that it's supposedly weak to, I wouldn't really know. I would just have to trust that it's doing what it said it was going to do.
Exactly.
Which is all to say that this preparation phase has so much to it, but it might not actually matter a ton until you get to probably, I would say, like the high rank story at the earliest. Because like the low rank final boss, you can do that with anything you want almost. I mean, it's not going to be a cakewalk of a fight, but like those little minutia may not matter quite as much. But like you said, I'm sure there's going to be a super boss update in 6 months that's like, they're going to punish me for not grinding out like a really great dragon element weapon or something like that. Or maybe more specifically armor. Because I think you do feel the difference in like, my armor is terrible against fire and I'm getting hit with fire a lot. Versus if you have a super resistant fire set, like I think you do feel that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Because I know one of the monsters that got released in this update is like a water monster. Yeah. And so the set that I had been kind of rocking throughout most of like my end game experience, like I went into that super weak to water, and I got like. I wasn't at full health, but like I was like 75% health or something like that. And so I was like, I don't need to heal yet. And it got just obliterated by like this new monster's like super attack or something. And I was just like, okay. Yeah. So I do need to pay attention a little bit more now.
You just made me think of something when it comes to feedback. Like, you have an HP bar that you can see when a monster hits you really hard and it takes 80% of your HP. That's instant feedback of like, oh, my armor is not good enough for this. But the monsters you fight don't have HP bars. So you have no idea if you're doing a relatively large amount of damage or more than you would. Because like, for example, the charge blade doesn't get its element right away. You have to like build it up. And then it can become, charged with whatever element you have. And so if the monster had an HP bar, maybe you could see the difference in a hit before and a hit after it's charged, but they don't have HP bars. What I really that's not a complaint about that choice. It's just like a feedback thing that you don't get. You see damage number pop-ups, but I'm frankly, I don't pay too much attention to those. As long as they're not like a bad color, like blue or whatever, like the bad color is. But yeah, what I do like about the fights themselves that does give you feedback is how all the animations change and how the monsters react to big hits, or as the fight drags on, the monster will start limping around, or start making more like desperate attacks instead of like kind of cool, calm, and collected for the first half of the fight. And then at the end, they're like really tired, but like they'll do this desperate one last big attack, and they can really mess you up if they hit you. And then after it's over, they collapse because they're exhausted. And like that feedback that you get instead of an HP bar is like really cool. And that's one of the things that I said earlier. It's like why someone can't just decide they're going to make a Monster Hunter game, because that's a thing that you need like expert animators and lots of them to do this stuff, to make, just look at the monster, look at how it's behaving. That will tell you how far along the fight is. And that's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just like you were saying too, of like how the journal like is talking about these monsters as though they're like real world, like ecological monster sort of things. Like because you can, like, these monsters are just kind of wandering around the environment. You can kind of just like, as long as most of them are not like aggressive to the point where they're going to just come attack you. So you can kind of just like watch them wander around, and those animations are super impressive in just like, you look at it and it's like, yeah, of course a thing that looks like this would move like that, like that makes sense. Like that, it is a very natural looking thing, which is something that I do think would be hard to like, it's one of those things where it's like, you'd notice if it was wrong, you'd notice if it was bad, but like when it's good, you don't necessarily notice those things because it feels so natural. And so I think it's great that you brought that up, because like, it like, kudos to the team there that designed them and did the animations, because like, yes, fantastic bits of that. And it is kind of a nice little like, I don't know, like we're so used to health bars, especially like coming from like the FromSoft games, where it's like you're fighting a boss and it's like boom, health bar, and so it's kind of cool to go into these and be like, okay, it adds some tension, not so much in this game because like we mentioned, we hadn't really like bumped up against the like time limit, but I remember like my first time playing through Monster Hunter World, getting towards like some of those end games where it was like, oh shit, like, like I can tell this monster's weak, but how weak is it? I've got, it's giving me the like 5-minute warning here. Am I going to make this, and so it's one of those things that I think can help kind of enhance the experience too, for sure.
Yeah.
So.
I hope I won't say that. I hope we make more comparisons, because if anyone gets mad at it, then I hope that we do. But I was thinking about boss fights in this versus a From Software type of thing, or like any other video game that has boss fights. Bosses usually get stronger throughout the fight. Like the second half of the boss fight will be harder than the first half, or that will be the same. And Monster Hunter has that really unique thing of like, the monster gets weaker throughout the fight for the most part. Some of the attacks will be stronger, and some of them have like second phases that are harder than the first phase. But by and large, when you're in like the last 10% of a fight, it's much easier than it was at the beginning, because the monster's worn out, it's injured. Maybe you cut its tail off in certain animals that attack with their tail. Like if you cut the tail off, boom, no more Rathian poison attacks, for example. Like, so it gets easier, but you get the feedback in the way that the thing moves around, which like, I don't really think there's a lot of action games that do it like that. There's one in Dark Souls 1, and it's super famous for doing that. But in Monster Hunter, they all do that. It's like, it's one of the things that really, like I started the game up, and like the quality of the fights was actually the thing that made me go, oh, this is really good. Actually, like I really like this, is because of the quality of the diversity in move sets that the monsters have, and this kind of evolving fight as you go, they don't feel like real animals, but like there is a realistic quality to that is how a fight would go in the real world. They're not going to go Super Saiyan when you have when you're on your last legs. It would work out in something like this, the way these fights go. And it's super unique. This is the thing, like you say you don't know why there's not more Monster Hunter games. This is the thing where like, why don't more boss fights work like this? Like, why can't we have an evolving type of situation throughout boss fights instead of the standard thing that we have is the like, oh, you took the health bar all the way down. Guess what? It refills. They're going Super Saiyan and now it's harder. Like sometimes 2, 3. I just fought a final boss in a Yakuza game that had legitimately 23 health bars. Like, and it's like played off for kind of a joke how quickly they go down. But like, you know what I mean? Like, this is the thing where I'm like, why don't more action games, if you're fighting big monsters, why don't they try to emulate this a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah, because like a lot of what this game reminds me of in a way is like The Witcher almost. And
with the prep
where there's like the prep and like sometimes the monsters, like I'm thinking about like the Griffin fight in The Witcher 3, where it's like you're fighting the Griffin and like it eventually is like, no, I'm like, you're hurting me. I'm out of here. And so you have to like go, go like track it down to its like nest and stuff. And it's like, like that is how a real world fight with an animal would probably go. It's not just gonna like, you start messing with it, it might be like, get away from me, and then it's going to get pissed, and then it's going to do like, it's going to be really strong at the start, but if you keep hurting it, it's going to be like, no, I'm out of here, like leave me alone, you know? And that is very much like what this game is just kind of like, oh, okay, like I am trying to do this, and like you said, there are so many options for how you approach this, like you were saying, like there's like a fire chicken basically called the Quematrice early on, and it uses its tail to like spray out some like flammable stuff and then like light it on fire. And so if you're constantly getting hit by that and you're like, I don't want this to keep hurting me like this, you can chop the tail off and then it can't do that move anymore, you know? The like if you've got a big blunt weapon, you can try to smack it in the head and like knock it to the ground. You can go for the legs, which like after a certain amount of like buildup of damage to the legs, it'll fall over. You know, like there are a lot of ways that you can kind of like manipulate the fight to go in your favor in this game, and in all Monster Hunter games really, but it's something that I really like about the series is it's like a bunch of little puzzles almost to solve, as like, okay, this is my issue here, what can I do about it right now, you know?
I was thinking about this, and this was a question I was going to ask you at some point, being a more longer term Monster Hunter fan than me. And it's often a thing with like long running series. I try to like distill down like what's the secret sauce in Monster Hunter, and the answer is actually quite simple in Monster Hunter. It's the monster fights. They're fantastic. Like they're amazing boss fights, in all of these different levels. Like, the different moves that they have, the animations. A lot of the moves will have like wind ups that you can learn, or tells, or maybe an audio cue or something like that. But at the end of the day, there's so much detail in the fights. The monster designs are all really cool. Like there's a lot of dragon type monsters for sure, but they're cool looking dragons. And then like some of the other stuff, like the Chemitrace, the fire chicken, or Lalabarina, that's like the spider monster. Like the designs of them are all really cool, and they can be quite different. Like there's like the dragon types, and then there's everything else almost. And within the everything else group, they all feel like you're fighting different types of monsters. And even like in the dragon ones too, like there's kind of smaller ones, and then there's like the Gravios, which is like this huge thing. And it feels different to fight that versus versus Ray Dow, the lightning dragon monster.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like that. I think that's the secret sauce, and it sounds simple to say, but it's like they give you the thing. You're like, you're going to fight a bunch of different monsters, and those fights are all going to be really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, there's not the only ones that I can think of are like the Rathian and the Rathalos that have a little bit of a, like, this kind of feels samey, just like a different color of this thing.
Yeah.
But pretty much every other monster that you fight is like, nope, this is a different type of, like, even some of the, like, there are 2 different like spider monsters in the game. And so they share like a skeleton almost of like rigging and, whatever for animation purposes. But like both move differently, both feel different when they're fighting you. Both it's not like it's, oh, this is the spider moves that it's doing, and like this is just a different skin on this, what you fought earlier that is doing the same moves. It's like, no, those have 2 distinct move sets,
Yeah. Two different octopus monsters, and they're extremely different from one another. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very good stuff.
And something that they'll continue to do, I assume, because they've done it in all the other Monster Hunter games that I've played, is continue to add more monsters as it goes on to give you, more and more stuff that you get to do. As like, I'm trying to remember how many they added to like World or Rise after launch. But there's usually like a decent number. I would say minimum of like 10 to 15, maybe more, probably, before the expansion, which will then add a bunch more too. But on top of that, they have like variants of these monsters. They have tempered monsters, which are kind of like, so there's the low rank, there's the high rank, and then within high rank, there's tempered monsters, which are then harder versions of the monsters themselves. Usually not, I'm trying to think if they change move sets when they're tempered or not. I think they're maybe more likely to use some of their more powerful moves.
Could be.
But it's not like they're, it's not like it's a completely different fight. Like, it's familiar enough that you can go do it, but it's definitely a more challenging fight.
Yeah.
And in previous games, they've had like an arch tempered version as well, which is the version where it's like, if you're not bringing, like, if your armor's not the correct armor, if you're not like min maxing, it is going to be a lot more challenging usually.
Yeah.
And so I would expect those types of things to continue to get added. Like, that's something I will shout them out for, is that at least World and Rise have been pretty fantastic with like post-launch support.
In terms and these are free updates. I mean, not the expansion. That's a paid DLC thing, but like, for example, like as Dylan and I are talking, like maybe 2 weeks ago, they added in the first big update with 2 new monster fights, and that's free. Like, and they just continue doing that throughout this time. So it has the feel of like seasonal stuff, but it's not. It's just, frankly, it's a more responsible way of making a game like that. I think it's a very meaty base game, and then they'll give you some more fights for the people who are like just going to stay in it and stay on that gear grind and keep, like, that's the thing that the way the game continues is it just escalates seemingly forever with how hard the new monsters are going to be. And then in the expansion, they're probably going to be harder, and then more updates. I'm looking forward to like collaborations with other franchises. Like, I know they've done Final Fantasy collaborations in the past. So I'm looking forward to stuff like I would love a Final Fantasy 16 collaboration in this game or something like that. But like you get into like the kind of end game kind of process of Monster Hunter, which I'm not really on board with, because I don't need a forever game, basically. Like there are people who want to have a game that they play, and that's their game. And they'll play it for however much time they have per week, or maybe they'll have this on the side and then play another game. That's just not the kind of person that I am. Like all the people who play Destiny and like they play a shitload of Destiny and then maybe they'll play some other stuff sometimes. And Monster Hunter can be that game because if you like the fights enough and if you are motivated by the kind of thing of like, kill this monster, get the parts to craft a better weapon, to fight a harder monster, to get better parts, to craft a better weapon. Yeah. If that appeals to you, this game will never end because they, like you said, they keep adding updates and expansions and new updates and new event quests and new bounty quests. And there's always something for you to do. If this is your shit, like you can just play this forever.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because that's like in addition to, like you said, them adding monsters, they do like these event quests as well, where it's like, this is where they do a lot of their collaborations. Like I'm thinking about Rise, where they had like an event quest that was you were just running around, like riding your little Palico or Palamute around in Rise, collecting rings like it was Sonic the Hedgehog. And like when you did that quest, you could get like a little outfit for your cat that was Sonic themed. And there's one in Monster Hunter World where it was like in a quest where you had to go out and hunt like these two monsters, and then it would give you some materials so that you could make a like Devil May Cry armor set and a charge blade that was like Devil May Cry. And so like they've got that kind of stuff, which is cool. They've got like bigger collaborations, like you could fight Behemoth from Final Fantasy in Monster Hunter World. They had like a whole Witcher 3 collaboration where like Geralt got sucked into the Monster Hunter version, like universe, and you had to go fight a Leshy. Leshin. Yeah. And so like that kind of stuff is cool. And so it's got quite a tail on it, like it's, if this is the only thing you're playing, it like you may get bored of it between content drops. Cause they usually do like 4-ish a year. But like there will be new stuff constantly, like at least several times throughout the year, until they get to the expansion. And when the expansion comes out, there will then be another like year to 2 years worth of like updates for that as well. Yeah. And so like Monster Hunter Wilds is a game that is theoretically like 5 or 6 years worth of tail on it, So which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And it, to me, the way that they do this just feels better than a game where you have to buy a season pass every 4 months or however those work, where you buy the game one time, and then if you're motivated by like, I'm going to craft every weapon in the weapon tree, that's going to take you forever to do that. So like that's tons of time. And like, if you really like doing the fights, that's tons of time where you're going to have a good time doing that stuff. Yeah. So again, it just feels it feels better to me to have ultimately the same result, which is to have people continuing to play your game for a really long time. Maybe you make less money because they're not, you probably squeeze less money out of people, but like, I don't know. It feels better the way that this, and maybe there's some goodwill that's built up because of the way that this works financially too. But I was going to ask you, like, I'm not going to be the person who's like, I'm going to go in there and grind out monsters just to craft new weapons. Like, I will go in when there's new monsters to fight. That's it.
Yeah.
What about you though? Like, have you ever been on the gear grind, the end game gear grind, or are you right now?
Yeah, so where I'm at right now is my main objective that I'm trying to do right now is there are variations of every single monster, or most of the monsters in the game. Like there's a miniature version of it and a like large version of it. And so I'm currently trying to grind out, like find the last few miniature and large versions of a few of the monsters that I haven't found yet.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so you'll it's like a golden crown and a miniature crown that you can get for most of the monsters. I don't think you can get it for like the end game boss and like a couple of other monsters in there, but for the most part it's, most of the monsters that are in there, and there are like achievements tied to like getting so many of these crowns and ultimately getting like all of the crowns in your journal. And so I've been doing that, which really is just kind of like going in and either like exploring the maps where those monsters are and just trying to like see with your little telescope, like, is this an extra large monster this time, or is it just a regular monster, and or jumping into like the multiplayer and just randomly helping like various players with their quests to go kill this monster and hoping that like it's going to be a big version of it. So that's been my main grind. I'm trying to like get a set of like all of the armors, just to like, this game has a pretty cool like transmog feature where like once you craft the high rank version of the armor, you can like transmog your armor to look like that. So like that's a kind of cool little feature. You also in this game like can choose between like the male and the female versions of the armor, giving you even more like options as far as like what you want your character to look like. So I've been doing that. I haven't tried to get all of the weapons. I've kind of just found like my like the and I think some of that's because of the Artian weapon system, that we'll probably talk about in just a second, because that has like a lot of the time that is the default best weapon to use, and so that has made it easier to not feel like I have to like try to go grind all of the weapons. But for some of the like for the switch axe, I have been trying to get like a bunch of those weapons just because I'm like, I like the switch axe, so like I'm gonna try to have, and I think they've kind of mentioned that they're hoping to add like the weapon transmog, so it's like a lot of the having the cool looking weapons, even if that's not the one you're using, is kind of cool, so that's what I've been doing. I've fallen off of it. I've been playing some other stuff recently, but just the like there is so much content there if you want to seek it out, like at a certain point it is just kind of fighting the same monsters over and over and over again, which if you really enjoy it is great. But I appreciate, like you were kind of saying though, that it's not like they, like if they were doing a battle pass or something like that, like you would have no choice but to like just continue to play the game and grind it out and fight these monsters over and over and over again, so that you could feel like you were getting your money's worth, right? Versus the way that they're doing it, which is like, hey, like you finished, you fought the 2 new monsters that we released in this update. Cool. Now, take a couple months off. We're gonna release another. I think they're shooting for like May or June or something like that for their next drop, and so it's like, just maybe come back, fight those couple of monsters, maybe craft a weapon in your favorite type, maybe craft some of the armor, that'll take you a few days of playing the game maybe, and then drop off and come back. Or you can take an entire year off, come back, and have all of that stuff ready to go in a year when you come back. It's not seasonal, which means it goes away after 4 months. It's something that is always going, like all of this stuff is getting added to the game is going to be in the game in perpetuity, basically. So that's a kind of cool feature as well.
Yeah. And for me, like I can do the whole story, the low rank and the high rank story, and then I can do the the obvious new optional things like the update monsters and stuff like that. And then I can be like, I'm good. I played for 40 hours. Like I had a great time during that 40 hours. I'm not going to do the gear grind. And then I'll be back in a month or two when the next new monsters drop. And then when the expansion comes out, I'm getting that for sure. Like I'll be there because it's going to be, a bunch of new stuff to do. And it's one of those things where I think there's great joy now for us when there's a new monster to fight in Monster Hunter, because it's going to be cool. It's going to be a good time.
Yes, for sure. And, I don't know. Like, we haven't really mentioned it, but like, especially when it's a new, like, never before seen monster,
Yeah.
like that hasn't been in a previous game. There's something about, or if it's just your first time experiencing it, like the first
Right.
time you beat it, you're like beeline straight to the blacksmith so that you can see
Yeah.
what the new armor looks like, so you can see
Yeah.
what the new weapons look like. Like that part is just so fun. So as we wrap up sort of this gameplay thing, I wanted to just kind of quickly run through the list of things that were changes with specifically Wilds from previous games. Number one, because, if you're listening to this and and so far we haven't convinced you to go try this game, or maybe you've played these games in the past and you have some reservations, these are some cool things that are new. But also I thought these were worth kind of shouting out as well, and just kind of, yeah, especially getting your perspective too, because like I'm looking at these as like, oh, this is cool because like they haven't done this before, and some of these for you may just kind of be like, whatever, like. So the open world is probably the biggest part of Monster Hunter Wilds. That was like one of their main selling points. Was it is theoretically possible to kind of like just ride or walk your way through all of the environments. Like there are technically connection points between the different, like the 5 different maps that you can just go to.
Mm-hmm.
In practice, that won't be what you do. You'll just kind of teleport there using the fast travel system. But but it is cool that like your camp and then the world is like one consistent thing. There are not load screens between like finishing your prep and going to get the monster. So that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, as an open world, typically when I think of, why would I want to play an open world game, it would be because I want to have a world to explore, and Monster Hunter just isn't that kind of game. I am never just wandering around in the open world. I'm always either on my way to fight something, or let's say I'm running low on like adamant seeds that raise your defense in fights. I will find where they grow on the map and I'll run out and go grab some. But as far as like, it's cool to go through the open world and see all the monsters out there, because they are just kind of roaming around doing their thing. Sometimes you'll be running through the world and 2 big things will be fighting each other and you're like, okay, I'm gonna not run in the middle of that. I'll just let them do their thing. But it doesn't have the appeal that like an open world in a Ghost of Tsushima or something, where you're like, I can't wait to go look at what's over there. Like, it's not that kind of game, but it is cool for a world building thing to be able to see the different environments are mostly really beautiful. They're really complicated. Like, there's a lot of verticality in some of the in most of the areas, and that's a thing that like, you have one of the new things in Monster Hunter Wilds is your Sacred, which is legally not a chocobo that you ride around. And
it will 100% get a chocobo skin at some point.
Once Square and Capcom buddy up again. There's one of the new features is like your Sacred will like auto drive you to where the monster is if you press the button for that. And that's one of the things that the old heads are a little grumpy about. But it does kind of take you out of like learning the open world when you're autopiloting to the monster. And so I would say like, oh, well, I'm not going to use that. But the verticality and like how complicated some of these environments are means like, I don't think I can mentally map these places, especially when you get down to like the Dragon Torch area or the forest area, and there's so many like high levels and weird connections and like vines to climb and stuff. Like, I don't think I can do that by myself, or I don't want to play for as long as it would take me to learn all that by myself. So I'm just going to let the thing auto drive me there to the fights.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that I appreciate. Like, cause I remember playing in World where like, you were guided to where the monster was, but like you had to run there yourself, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that was part of the reason why those fights felt a little bit longer, was because there was like, you had like in the ancient forest, you had like 10 minutes where you were like climbing the fucking tree to get to the top where the dragon was, you know? And so like there is a little bit of that. I can understand the people that are, you know, like, no, I want it to feel like I'm, you know, actually hunting this thing. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I get it. But like, I do think it'd be interesting if there was like not a hardcore mode, but like maybe some settings you could toggle more so that it was like less info on the screen. You were having to like learn some of this for those old heads that really wanted it to be like more of a sim. But yeah, the Sacred is really cool. The Sacred can come get you in battle, which is a new thing. Like normal, like in previous games, if you were like beat to shit and needed to heal, you kind of had to like find your opening to heal, and sometimes that meant like, oh, I've got to dodge about 7 more attacks before I can find this opening to heal. Now it's a lot easier. You can just hit like up or down on the D-pad. Your Sacred will come grab you off the ground and be like, okay, let's run out of here so that you can heal and come back. So that's that has made it a little bit easier to deal with some of the more punishing aspects of like fighting a new monster.
That's one where I can hear the old heads being like, back in my day, you used to have to find your opening to heal in a fight. Because again, to drink a potion, you have to put your weapon away, and you have to have 5 seconds of downtime to do all that, pop open a potion and drink it. And then potions aren't instant heals. They heal kind of like, not like slowly over time, but it's not like a boom, you're back to full health type thing. So like that's another one of those like streamlining quality of life things where I get why someone would say that they're taking some of the character or the difficulty, not difficulty, but like the challenge out of it. Like I get that. I do automatically press up on the D-pad when I get knocked down so that my Sacred can come get me. So I'm part of the problem, I guess.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those where it's just too like I can look back and appreciate how it was because I used to have to do it.
Yeah.
But it's so much nicer now. It's so much like it's one of those things where like sometimes people pine after like Dark Souls 1, and it's like, yeah, but like sometimes some of the stuff Dark Souls 3 did is nicer though. Like it's more convenient, you know.
Sometimes you're like, yeah, you think you remember exactly how it was, but then you'll go back and be like, oh, how does humanity work again, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing the Sacred allows you to do is it can carry like a secondary weapon. So this is the first time in a Monster Hunter game you can swap weapons mid-hunt. So that's kind of cool. In practicality, like I haven't found myself switching weapons during a fight all that much. Just because I tend to like my weapon. And like I can see it being a thing where eventually you'll start getting into quests that have like you fight 2 monsters, and like if a monster is flying, sometimes I like to just go bow because I don't feel like running around trying to hit the like one part of its body that is low enough to the ground while it's flying around with a sword. And so I those have been the most times that I've like swapped weapons mid-fight. But what about you? Have you found yourself swapping weapons, taking advantage of that system, or it's just kind of like, nope, I have my trusty charge blade?
I have 2 charge blades.
Okay. Yep. Solid.
It's usually like, it's kind of like you said, and I never switch mid-fight, but it's like I have my paralysis charge blade that's kind of like my standard one, and then if for whatever reason I don't feel like it's working, I have an Ardian charge blade that's just kind of like an all-purpose weapon, and then that's my kind of backup. But the more often I will be in a panic and accidentally press right or left on the D-pad and accidentally change, and then I'll be fighting, be like, my weapon looks different. What's going on here? Oh, I switched on accident. I did try, like you said, I was like, I had a charge blade and then I brought a bow, and I didn't give it a ton of time, but I don't like how the bow feels in this game. So I didn't, I eventually swapped for another charge blade.
Yeah. Understandable. You know, Like I would say this is the first Monster Hunter game I've played that I've liked how the bow has felt personally. So
Fair enough.
So yeah, it's a different thing. And that brings me to the next point, which is a lot of the weapons have changed their move sets. A lot of the weapons have gotten some new toys to play with. I can't say for certain what all of those are because I haven't, like, some of the older games I did not play like all of the weapons. I kind of played my like 4 or 5 that I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But I know the ones that I play, like there have been some updates. So like Switch Axe has a lot more options in terms of just like being able to. I'm trying to even think of like just some of the ways that you can like charge the Switch Axe up and change back and forth between the two moves or the two versions of it has been nice. I know Charge Blade.
Same with the Charge Blade, like it kind of plays into the next new thing that you wrote, the wound system.
Yeah.
Where in order to get that like pizza cutter mode going on the Charge Blade, there's like 3 different things that you can pull off to like make that activate, and like that's when you really start using the Charge Blade. And one of them is if you use the focus mode to hit a wound, it will automatically switch it and turn on the pizza cutter, and you'll do like this really cool move. But like you have to have that wound system, which is new in this game. So I assume that that's a new thing for the Charge Blade in this game, is one of the ways to get this thing going. So I really like the wound system. I mean, I just have Rise to compare it to, but it makes the fights feel more dynamic. Like instead of just whacking its legs forever, hey, a wound opened up on, its foreleg or on its head or on its tail or something. So that gives you a specific target, and different body parts will give you different materials for weapons and armor. So like, hey, attack the tail and then a wound opens up. And if you hit that wound on the tail, you'll cut the tail off. Instead of what I think I remember from Rise, where it was just like, just attack the tail a bunch and it might happen, it might not, you have better kind of fine control of it in here. If you're in like that real end game grind and you're hunting for like very specific materials from monsters, you can kind of strategize a little bit with this wound system. And I like it a lot.
For sure. And, it can really help with some monster, like we mentioned the Gravios earlier, where it's like this big stone covered like dragon thing. And that it can be really hard to damage it early on in the fight because it's covered in all these stones. And so the wound system gives you that opportunity to like, because when you're hitting a wound, it's automatically like crit damage and stuff. And so, so on a monster that's got like more armor plating or something like that, it can give you a way to actually like get some damage in when normally you weren't really able to. And the focus mode, you can have it like, basically it's just like holding down left trigger, which allows you to see the wounds and like kind of have a finer control of like where your character is aiming. I went ahead and just toggled that to always be on. When I hit it, it's on a toggle, it's not on a hold, just because I personally have found that I enjoy sort of having that more fine-tuned control when I'm using like a melee weapon, especially because like there isn't a lock-on system in this game like there is in like Dark Souls. Like there's like you do lock onto the target, but like it doesn't pull you towards the target necessarily.
No, it just kind of keeps it like in the middle of the camera more so than like, because you still have to like very deliberately point your character toward what you're trying to hit for sure.
Exactly.
So if you're like, I want to make sure I hit the tail and not the back leg, that focus mode will really let you focus on hitting the tail.
Exactly. So that's been a really cool improvement that I've liked. And it's a sort of iteration on something that was in World, which they had like a tenderizing system or something with the expansion Iceborne, where like you had to grapple onto the monster and then like you could open a tender spot, which was kind of like a proto wound.
Mm-hmm.
But it became very like rote Like that was how every fight basically went, was like you just went, grappled, tenderized, attacked the tender spot until it went away, and then did it again. And so it became very samey for a lot of people, whereas this is much more dynamic because it's more about just like how, like, the gameplay itself, like you're not having to specifically try to open wounds. It's like that is just happening as you're playing, giving it a more organic feel.
And it gives like really special, like, I think it makes it cooler to use something like the bow, because you can like really pinpoint wounds. And like, I mean, like, one of my friends that I was playing the game with played with the bow for most of the time that we played together. And that was like, he was busting wounds open left and right. As soon as one opened up, it would be like, oh, wound on the shoulder. And he's like, boom, boom, boom. Wound is busted open. Big damage to the monster. And like, I think it could make the bow feel better to use, feel more impactful to use than just kind of standing there plinking away without that system.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a big part of why I feel like I've liked the bow a lot more in this iteration.
Yeah.
They added alpha monsters, which was like a selling point in the trailer, but like really hasn't been that big of a deal. There's like 2 monsters that have alpha versions essentially in the game.
Yeah, and I'm never fighting like a whole herd of Doshagma at the same time. Like, why would I do that? So
exactly.
Yeah.
They very quickly are like, here, this is the problem. It's an alpha. And then they're like, and immediately here is the solution that you can use. So that's been a thing. There are more monsters at once. In previous games, there were like a max of 3 large monsters at a time. Now there can just be like a ton of monsters kind of roaming the map, which is cool.
It's like a comical number of large monsters. Like, if you're kind of viewing this as like, quote, a place that could be possible, like, there's just too many apex predators out there at the same time. It would be like, the cool thing about this though is like, another thing that adds dynamic qualities to your fights is, you fight monsters and then you do enough damage, eventually they'll run away from you. And on the way to running away, a lot of times they'll come across another monster and they'll get into what they call a turf war, and they'll fight until one of them takes enough damage and runs away. But if it's the monster you're fighting, you can just kind of chill and let that other monster do some big damage to the one you're fighting, and then eventually they'll separate and you can continue your fight. But it kind of shakes it up, and it makes the world, I don't want to say it makes the world feel realistic or alive or something, but like, it's cool to just like turn a corner and be like, oh, there's a big dragon, there's a Rathalos in here, and it's suddenly fighting the thing that... It's even cooler when you're fighting in a room and another monster comes into your room and joins the fight, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a lot. Let me back off here. But it's cool when, you get little shakeups, because if that fight's going to take you 25 minutes, like, you might appreciate a little thing like that. It could be a break for you to heal or sharpen your weapon or whatever.
For sure. I guess one of the big other things is like, there is a dynamic weather system that ties into the story. So each zone has a like fallow period, a inclemency period, and a plenty period. And the map changes kind of what it looks like mostly. The first 2 maps do this really well. And then the last like 3 maps do it less well. 2 maps, 3 maps. And I guess the first 3 maps do it pretty well. And then the last 2 are kind of like, sure, I guess it's colder, or, something. But like the first map that you're on, the plains, it's like, it's very desert and sandy during the fallow period. And then that's when the big sandstorm that you probably saw in the trailers like blows in for the inclemency. And so it's like this massive sandstorm. Everything's got like this blue tint. There's lightning like striking. The big apex predator of the region usually shows up. And then once that inclemency period is over, it becomes a plenty period, where it's like the color pops a lot more. There's more water. There are more like just regular like little small animals on the map and stuff. And so that was like a cool also like feature of this game that I've enjoyed that part of it, just because I like the fact that it is still just the 5 large maps, but it almost feels like 15 sometimes. Well, feels like 12. So 11, 12, something like that. You know, like I said, the first 3 really do kind of feel like they change when they're going through these things. The last 2, it's kind of like, I guess the wind is blowing more here or something, you know?
Yeah. This is mostly a background detail for me, unless it's like the monster you want to hunt only shows up during this particular weather, but you can go change the weather at will at a certain point. So you're like, whatever, I'll just go do that. But visually, some of it looks really cool. I mean, this is a beautiful game.
It is.
And weather effects especially are really cool in the game, especially like you said, that lightning. And I think that plays into that one fight being one of my favorites, is just the spectacle of the sandstorm and the lightning and all of that stuff.
Yes, for sure. I'll shout out that this is the first Monster Hunter game that has crossplay, and technically has better quote unquote multiplayer. Which so this is I'd like to get your perspective on this, because you've done a lot more, it sounds like, with the multiplayer. Like I've usually just joined randos. I did a little bit of like multiplayer stuff towards the beginning with people I knew, but what has been your experience with the multiplayer as someone who is not really familiar with maybe how terrible old Monster Hunter multiplayer used to be?
Big learning curve to figure out how to use it, but once you learn how to set up a link party and how to join the right lobby, it's fine. It's really not hard to do, but the first couple days, none of us knew what the hell was going on. Even the people who played previous Monster Hunter games were like, what's a link party? What's the difference between a link party and a squad? And, stuff like proper nouns that within Monster Hunter mean very different things. But if you just say that to a layperson or anyone who's not playing Monster Hunter, they're like, a link party and a squad sound like the same thing. So it's not that hard once you come to terms with it. And I feel like I understand the system now for how to play with randoms or how to shoot the SOS beacons, and I know how to join friends quests and stuff like that. But it was a learning curve for sure. I'm just astounded at any game that is like going to have a significant multiplayer element that's not crossplay since 10 years ago, let alone in 2025. I can't believe this is the first one that has crossplay. Like, why would you not have crossplay?
Well, I think an important note for a lot of the previous ones are they were locked to one console. Like World was the first one that was on, like everything up until World, I think, was on either like a Nintendo DS or a PSP specifically. And so like it made sense, I guess, that there wasn't really a ton of crossplay there. World was kind of the first one where everybody was like, crossplay, guys, come on.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. They released World on PC much later than PS4. So at that point, they're like, you want us? I mean, they could have built crossplay in after the fact, I'm sure. But it's just a thing where it's like, I boot up a multiplayer game, I just assume there's going to be crossplay, because why wouldn't there be in 2025? If everything's launching at the same time, why not? I'm glad to see that, because I was playing on PC. But most of the people I was playing with and like linking up with were playing on PlayStation. And, this game like famously didn't run great on PC for a lot of people, unless you have like a very good computer, which I'm lucky enough I do. But, if you bought your PC 5 years ago, it's not going to run Monster Hunter Wilds great unless it was like top of the line back then. So to be able to play with people who are like, my PC is just kind of okay, I'm going to buy it on PS5. To be able to play with them, it was great.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And like you said too, I think they've made a lot of strides in just making the experience of linking up a lot smoother. Like in previous games, like I think you had to go and do the quest. Like if you were trying to play with 4 other people or 3 other people, you had to do the quest 4 times because it wouldn't save progress and stuff. And so like they've like now it still pulls you out a little bit because you have to like go watch the cutscene in your own like version of the game. But once that cutscene is done, like progress still counts. Like, so if you're trying to fight like the Quematrice quest, like do the Quematrice quest in your version of the game and somebody hops in on that same quest, they get credit for it too, which is, you know, an improvement. So I appreciate that about it.
Yeah. That's one of those things where it's like, you know, if everyone gets credit for it and they collectively spend a little bit less time playing the game, who cares? Just like they did the quest, give them credit for doing the quest, even if it's a story quest, even if it's the final boss. Like, who cares?
Exactly. The last thing I'll shout out, that'll kind of roll us into the sort of, it's not going to be a long talk. I don't necessarily think about stories, but this game is one that I would say has the most story out of a Monster Hunter game, at least the ones that I have played.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels like it's come the closest to, like, if you're talking to somebody about a game having a story, this one is the closest one that I would say it comes to having what a normal gamer would consider a story.
It has like, I remember the story in Rise was basically like, there's monsters attacking the village over and over and over and over again. That's the story of Monster Hunter Rise. In Wilds, there is a plot that you play through.
And then this is the first one with a voice acted hunter. So like in every previous Monster Hunter game, your monster or your hunter may have said some like throwaway lines in combat or something. But this is the first one where they're actually like speaking in cutscenes and stuff. And this is the first one where your cat, your Palico, is speaking English. In all previous games, it just made cat sounds. So some of the old heads were very mad about that.
I turned the cat sounds off immediately. Fuck that shit. English for the Palicos. Yeah,
exactly. So with that in mind, we are going to roll into a discussion on the story. Like I said, we're probably not going to get like super in depth on the story, just because again, it is Monster Hunter, and a lot of it does just kind of boil down to, oh no, monsters, go kill them. But if you're trying to avoid any sort of spoilers, this is where that will be. But yeah, so there are 3 kind of stories, 2 to 3 stories in every Monster Hunter game that I've played. So you've got your low rank story, which is kind of like the one that they set up at the beginning of the game that finishes up roughly like halfway to 2/3 of the way through the game. Like that's usually like they'll roll the credits and stuff. And then after the credits, there'll usually be like a little like like after credits scene, and then that kind of sets up the high rank story, which is less in depth than the low rank story, but is still like a through line, like something is going on, we're trying to figure out what. And then with a lot of the title updates, there's usually like this additional like this new, like there's usually like some sort of justification for like, this new monster's here, like, and it somehow ties into the story sort of thing. Like this most recent update, they brought the final boss back, and so there was a little bit of a like story thing that went along with like, oh, the final boss is back again, what's up with that? So what did you think of just the story? How would you sum up the story? I guess maybe a big a good first, you know, it doesn't have to be a sentence, but you know.
Yeah. So like the basic gist of the story is there's this kid named Nata who escapes from this this local tribe when it's attacked by this big monster. Your hunting crew finds Nata in the desert, and then is like, the monsters are acting weird, we need to figure out why, and then also we need to find Nata's people. And by doing so, we uncover the reason why the monsters are acting weird, the reason why this big white monster attacked their people. And, there's a story that they go through. You go to like the different tribes in the world, and they all have like their local apex predator that's acting up and causing problems for everybody. And then you kind of get to the source of why Arkveld, which is the big white one, why it was going crazy. You find Nata's people, and then you find there's actually another monster that's feeding on this like infinite energy source. There's this ancient civilization that built this infinite energy source and then built these weapons. The Arkveld and I think the Zoshia are artificial. They're not living beings. And they kind of went crazy and like wiped out the ancient civilization, and now they're feeding on the infinite energy source, so they got to go, basically.
Yeah.
And that's the story, basically. I mean, I'm leaving out details. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't care about a single character in this story, except for Alma. She's perfect.
Alma's great.
I didn't, anyone in like a village that you met, anyone who turned into a quest giver, there's the little legally not Ewok characters called Mudwoods. There's one called Rove that like talks in philosophical musings that like a lot of people like. I didn't care about him. It's like I didn't play this game because I thought the story would be good. I was honestly like I was honestly prepared to not care about the story, because the story in Monster Hunter Rise was almost nothing. But the thing about Wilds is they have you sit through those cutscenes, and they have you do the walk and talk sections or the ride and talk sections, and they have you do what would be like, they have you do quests in the main story that aren't ending with fighting a big monster sometimes. They're kind of like story setup quests. And so in Rise, I would play that game, and if I were, doing the critic thing, I would be like, the game allows you to kind of brush off the story. So then in critique, I'm more comfortable saying the story doesn't factor into a critique for me. Because even the game is like, we're giving you a flimsy reason why there's monsters. And in this game is like, we have all these characters. We hope you care about them. We have these tribes around. We hope you're interested in them. And I just don't think any of this is interesting at all. There's a couple like, when they're like, oh, the Guardians are artificial, and like the Zoshia was built to be a super weapon that got out of control. Like, I can be like, oh yeah, okay, that's kind of cool, parallels to nuclear weapons or whatever. But I don't care. Like, I wasn't emotionally invested in this story at all. So I remember hearing a quote from the game director where he, maybe trying to manifest this, but basically said like, we attribute Monster Hunter Wild's success to the emphasis on story. And all of us were like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, this story is not it, it's not it. So like, I appreciate the story for setting up the spectacle of some of these fights, but that is all that I appreciate about the story, really. There is nothing thematic that I find interesting about it. I don't care about most of the characters. I was like talking to my friends, and I was like, I can't find this quest. Where's this quest? They're like, oh, why don't you go speak to Jonathan in this village? I'm like, who the hell is Jonathan? Like, they're like, oh, you talked to him 4 times during the main story. I was like, okay, I guess I did, I've been talking a lot. I don't think that this story is really interesting, really in the slightest, other than like quick little like, oh, kind of cool. They built a super weapon that wiped out the civilization. Like, and that's what Zoshia is. But while I'm fighting Zoshia, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about how cool it is to fight this monster.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would agree with you. Like, as somebody who has played other Monster Hunter games, I definitely did not come into this expecting much in the way of story. Like, to me in the Monster Hunter games, like, story is the vehicle to usher you from one boss fight to another, basically.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And so like in with that lens, I'm like, yeah, this is like the best Monster Hunter story that there has
kind of
been
by default,
because,
right?
yeah, like because it's like they did more than just do that. But I will agree with you that there is a lot of like Yasai and like all the people in that first village that's like these crystal like wind chimes will protect us. I was like, I don't really care about you guys. Like if
Yeah.
you're that dumb, like whatever, dude. Like
Yeah. So there's like what this could have been that it got me thinking about, where it's like you had, like you said, that first village of the people, they have never seen a weapon before when you get there. And they're
And
like, yeah.
I was going to say stuff like that. I personally did find kind of interesting because I know a little bit more about sort of that lore of the Monster Hunter, like the greater lore of the Monster Hunter world, where it was kind of like almost this post-apocalyptic setting where they don't have weapon. Like there was this whole thing where they hunted dragons to extinction, and that's, you know, and they did this thing with Zoshia, and so that was what ended up leading to the civilization's downfall. And so now weapons are like not allowed except for the hunters because of all these reasons. And so like that kind of stuff I thought was kind of cool, but also that's me who has watched like the 3-hour, you know, YouTube lore video.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where for the average person, I'm like, yeah, they don't know the history of ancient Wyveria, so why would they give a shit about this, you know?
Right. So like this village, I guess then is like so far past the point where weapons were outlawed or whatever, and they just like the people who are living there now, you walk in with a weapon, they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
You know? And so to me, it could have set up a thing where it's like you basically come in and kind of corrupt their way of life, because after they see you fight these monsters, they're like, oh, let me get on this weapon action, you know? And we could have had a storyline about that. This series is primed and ready for a storyline about how much you're fucking up the ecosystem by killing all these monsters. But this game, there is no comment about that whatsoever. Other than like Alma like half tries to avoid you fighting it when you've come across a new monster, but you know, it like roars real loud one time. She's like, yeah, kill it.
Yeah.
And there's one cutscene where Nata is like, wait, don't kill it. And then like, that's the extent of it. And so like, I think there's like opportunity for interesting storytelling because you have these, I mean, there are interesting like situations like brought up by what Monster Hunter is, but this story ends up being really, really simple, other than maybe connecting back to existing lore a little bit. But like, and I agree with you. I think that existing lore is kind of cool. But I wish that they could have connected it, I think, instead of like relying on longtime players to be like, oh yeah, I do know the history of ancient Wyveria, where they could have like connected that into the story and been like, wait, this is actually like, you are going to lead us down a path of destruction again. Like, can there be some push and pull? I don't know, but there's not.
I was kind of expecting that with some of the characters like Werner and what's his name? Alex, was that his name? Whatever the guy who was definitely voiced by whoever plays in Seven Deadly Sins, like the goat sin of lust or whoever. Like it's the same guy, I swear. But it like I thought there was going to be this like push and pull of like, oh, we want to use the dragon torch for this, or we want to do that. And like they kind of looked like they were headed in that direction. And then it was just like, whatever.
Once you kill the monster that's like feeding on the dragon torch, it's almost not, it's all, maybe it is. I don't feel comfortable in saying that it's almost not brought up again.
Yeah.
Is it? Because
no, I mean, it's one of those things that looks like they might be trying to set more up in these updates that are coming out, but so far nothing has been brought up about it again.
Okay, I was going to say, because the other part of it is like for the high rank story, I was playing in voice chat most of the time. And I mean, hats off to anyone who can fully absorb a story while in voice chat with 3 other people, but not me. But like I got the broad beats of the plot, and like the main story cutscenes, I watched all of them, and it's like, I'm not going to walk around the villages talking to the people there. This is not the game that is like inspiring me to go do that.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not mad that some people are like, the walk and talk sections are terrible and they drag the game down. And I don't believe that. I just don't think that makes the game better. I kind of appreciate them as like a little like lead up to the fight. And like, if you truly don't know what's going to happen, you walk and you kind of talk about the situation, and then like some stuff happens, and it leads you into the spectacle of the fights really well. But I don't care about what they're talking about, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think you brought up a great point about how like it could be talking about like the ecology and conservationism and all of that kind of stuff a lot more.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of gets in its own way sometimes. It kind of shoots itself in the foot, because it's like the ideas of that are at odds with like the gameplay of the game. Like where it's just kind of like, oh, maybe we are fucking up the local ecology here. I guess we shouldn't kill these monsters. And that's like, okay, but then what? What am I supposed to do? I'm a hunter. That's, you know, and so like, it's one of those where I think like I'd love to see them explore some of that more. I think they would have to bring on somebody who could actually tell that nuanced story. I don't think anyone who is currently like writing the Monster Hunter stories has that kind of those chops, you know.
Well,
so
and it also clashes with what Monster Hunter the game is, because the end of the low rank story ends with you killing Arkveld, and it's presented as like you're kind of doing like a mercy killing, but it's kind of like sad because Arkveld has completely lost its mind, corrupted by whatever it is that corrupted it. But it's like it can't live anymore on its own. It's just too far gone. And like, you know, even Nata, who lost loved ones and was separated from his village, doesn't want you to kill it at first. And then it turns into this thing where it's like, what we have to, for the safety of everybody around, but also just like, look at this thing. You got to put it out of its misery here. And then it could be a moment where it's like, man, this is a bittersweet victory. We killed the last, it's like, it's one of a kind as far as I know, but because it's Monster Hunter, 15 minutes later, there's an Arkveld on your map and you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And something that I think it basically didn't matter in this game, but like the ability to either capture or kill, you know, I think they could have played with a bit more. Like they could make it a like, you know, are you capturing this? Are you trying to relocate these monsters, or, you know, trying to do something with them, or are you just killing them? Like, I'm not saying, you know, make it like a binary good bad choice where it's like if you capture so many or let so many of them free or whatever, kill them, like you get the good ending or the bad ending sort of thing. But like those are things that I think they could experiment with down the road a little. But I think you're right, where it is kind of the like the core conceit of it is like, and like theoretically they could even solve that by just kind of what you were talking about, by just putting it's like, yeah, you're just replaying the same quest. You're not actually killing more of these monsters in order to get the like parts, you know, like
it could be, yeah.
But that's not like they, for some, like they've always kind of tried to justify it. And so they're like, oh, the Arkveld somehow like, even though this wasn't artificially created, it laid an egg. Oh, the Zoshia somehow regenerated through the powers of the Dragon Torch or whatever. And it's like, or just say I'm fighting doing that quest again. It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah, I'm
you know?
I'm playing Monster Hunter here. Like I'm here. I've suspended disbelief. It's okay.
Yeah.
I think like what if they had a story beat where you went into a new area, you got attacked by this big monster, you kill it, and then suddenly it's like this thing was actually keeping this population of other monsters in check, and now they destroyed a village because you killed the thing that eats those things.
Yeah.
And you have to reckon with like your effect on the ecosystem in a way. Like I think that there are ways that Monster Hunter could tell stories.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're interested in telling that kind of story. Maybe
Right.
because there's already an inherent I think that like some people who are put off by hunting in real life would also be put off by the very concept of Monster Hunter. I'm put off by hunting. I'll never go hunting in my life.
Yeah.
Unless we're in the Mad Max post-apocalypse. Right. I'll never go hunting for recreation. I'll play Monster Hunter because it's, this shit's not real. I can separate that. But I wonder if like the people who made the game, surely they have heard this from, this is like a moral thing that the game is like kind of desensitizing you to killing wild animals that were not bothering you in a lot of cases until you stumbled into their place. I wonder if they just don't want to deal with that as storytellers.
Yeah. And I can definitely see that, because like a lot of us are playing video games for like a hero empowerment, like escape. And the second you start getting into the like, yeah, you kind of just like you came into this territory, you set up a camp, which threw off the ecosystem, and now this monster is mad because like you took over its territory, which is a normal monster response. Like you're the bad guy, actually, is not giving the vibes I think that a lot of people would come to Monster Hunter for.
Right.
But I do think it is an interesting, like I don't know that they'd ever make a game like that, but I do think it'd be cool to kind of see something like that, or even just kind of like you were saying, where it's like, like you're trying to sort of balance the creatures on the map, where it's like, okay, like you want one apex predator and then like two other predators and then like some that are like more herbivore type animals or like something. And you're trying to like manage population size much more than you're trying to like, more equivalent to like sort of real world conservationism, where it's like, we've got too many wolves, we need to do something about that sort of thing. Like they're eating all the deer. Something like that I think could be interesting, but it's one of the, I personally don't see them changing it until the like you said, the takeaway they took from this was, hey, this story was great. That's why so many people are playing it.
Yeah.
And I don't see them like pivoting too hard out of this kind of story and storytelling until, because like really it's kind of like Dark Souls, right? Or like a From Software game where like there is lore and there is stuff, but you kind of got to go find it. And a lot of people don't bother. They're just in it to explore the world and like fight the bosses, I kind of think for a lot of people, Monster Hunter is a similar type of thing where they're like, yeah, like it could not have a story and just be like, hey, this monster's the new problem, go fight it. And that would be enough story for like 60% of people,
Yeah. I think if they were going to go through this, telling this kind of story, if they didn't want to like quote go there and really explore the moral implications of killing all these monsters, I think that they could do more with uncovering backstory and lore. In like, you made me think of Horizon Zero Dawn and the way they handle learning about the past. They could do it in that way. They could definitely have more memorable characters. And so if you're not going to tell a story that has an exploration of moral dilemmas or whatever, you could have a more emotional story by having characters that I could be better attached to. Because like I said, Alma's perfect. It's kind of a joke. Alma's barely a character. Nata is barely a character. Nata has some like character growth, but like kind of by default has the most character growth. Your hunter is not a character.
No, he's just a badass.
Yeah, he's just a dude with the charge blade who's just, pizza cutter go burr, and that's his character. Gemma the blacksmith, she's not really a character. Like, these are characters by definition, but there is almost nothing to them as people.
Yeah.
So like, if there were a story beat where it's like, oh, Gemma's in trouble, like, I'm like, no, she's not. Like, that's not what this game is. So I think that could be a way, a different way for them to get a story that resonates more with people, because stories don't have to be the deepest things ever, but you can care about characters along the way.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like my experience here fully echoes yours or anyone who's listening. I don't know if I'm alone here or in the minority, or if everyone in the world agrees with me. But I just don't see this as like a story that's really going to do a lot for people, other than I'm about to fight Zoshia. Tell me why I'm fighting Zoshia. Oh, okay, cool. And now I'm going to fight Zoshia, and I'm going to forget about that until it's podcast time. And I'm like, what was Zoshia's deal? Let me look that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, going off of what you were kind of saying about like the characters, I think too, a way to make a more impactful Monster Hunter story is actually putting stakes in, because like we're told that this monster like attacked Nata's village and maybe killed some people and stuff. We don't ever see that, like none of the times that anybody is in any sort of danger is there ever like that stake of like, oh no, Gemma, oh no, Alma, oh no, this, village that thought their wind chimes were going to scare all the monsters away. Like none of that is ever like, oh shoot, like this, like Deshagama fucking killed somebody in front of us. Like, we do need to go deal with it.
Rathalos burned down the Wudwud village. Like,
like there's never that part of it, which I think could help like justify like, if they make these characters that we care about and then put them in danger and aren't scared to like Fabius, like the head guy, he was from like Monster Hunter 4, I think. But like if he fought the Gore Magala at the end and like died in that fight or something and then we had to go avenge him, like that's a much more impactful moment than him just being like, it's Gore Magala again, I knew it. And you're just like, okay, I guess we're gonna go kill this other thing that's called a Gore Magala apparently, like so that's something that I think could be an interesting way to do it, maybe.
I mean, there are ways, and I don't honestly, I don't know if they're interested in telling a story like that, because I think that in their heart of hearts they know that that's not why we're here. We're here to fight monsters, and if the story is, I was kind of thinking like, if they ever made a story that was like really, that had stakes and emotions and great characters, like this might be the best game ever made. But it's not. It's just, I don't know, maybe they're working out how they want to do stories, and the next one will be better if they want to do it. But this one, it seemed like they really tried and they wanted us to care, and it's just, just kind of flat in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, where it's just kind of like, I don't think this game would have been significantly worse with a more basic story.
No.
And so that's the, like, like you said earlier, it's one of those things where if they hadn't made such a big deal about this story, I don't think anybody would really think about it, like as being a thing. And so it is one of those where it's like, it's okay for a game to just kind of have a loose association of like reasons for you to go kill a monster and feel like a hero, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of games out there where the gameplay is tight and you're just along for the ride, and it doesn't matter what the story is because it gets you to your next gameplay thing, and like that's perfectly fine. There's plenty of amazing games like that. I mean, personally, I don't care about a single Castlevania or Metroid story, and I love those games. So it's just, they serve the game in the way that they should, and I think this story does serve the game in the way that it should by getting you into the monster fights and giving you reasons why this is all happening and stuff. But it is set up in a way where you should, if you're a critic, you should evaluate the story and be like, are these characters interesting? Is this plot line interesting? Are they exploring themes in an interesting way? And that 0 for 3, in my opinion, there, while acknowledging that the job of a Monster Hunter story is to get you into the fights, and it does do that. And my dog agrees with me.
Exactly. Okay. So I think that is probably a great place to wrap up sort of that story talk. And so the last couple of things I'll throw out there, first, favorite monster or favorite monsters. You have a top 3 as we're from this game.
Yeah. I really like New Udra for the fire octopus. Just for the spectacle in the fight, the environmental interaction, and I mean, I think octopi are cool, and fighting a giant octopus is awesome. So that's one of mine. Special honorable mention, I guess, to Zhu Wu, the other octopus, because it's like an eldritch horror monster with like all the teeth and stuff like that. That's super cool. I like Ray Dao a lot. Again, fun fight, but the spectacle of it is fantastic with the lightning storm and all that. And then the other one in my top 3 is Lalaburina, just because I think it's just a really cool monster. And Mizitsune, which is not new for this game, but in the update, really, really cool monster. It's my first time fighting one, I think. So yeah, those my top 5, I suppose.
Awesome. Yeah, I will definitely second Ray Dao and the new Udra. Both of those were fantastic fights and designs of those monsters.
Yeah.
I really liked the Arkfeld as well. I thought that was a super cool, like, sort of chain blade arm monster. That was a lot of fun. Zoshia, I've been fighting a lot recently, and like the initial Zoshia fight was really cool, but like you only saw it the one time. And now that I've gotten a chance to like go back and do it some more, I'm like, this is a really cool monster too. I really like what they've done here. And like it feels like a much more dynamic fight because it is like more boss oriented. Like I know it's weird to say about a game that's essentially just all boss fights anyway, but like this one feels like there are a lot more like things that you have to be aware of environmentally. Similar to the I think it's the Jin Dahad, the big like ice dragon. I really liked that fight as well, where you're kind of like going to 3 different, like a bunch of different locations along as the fight progresses. It does its like big move where you have to like pull down like icicles from the ceiling to hide behind so that you don't auto die. So those have been really cool. And that the Jin Dahad and the really all of the armors are pretty awesome, especially for the monsters we've been talking about. So
yeah, that's kind of like the secret is like I gave my top 5, but I think there's only like one fight that I really didn't like, and it was the Gormagala, because I think Frenzy is a shitty mechanic.
Yeah.
But if there were a way to fight it without the Frenzy mechanic, which I haven't tried, it's a cool monster. Like the design is cool, the move set is cool. Like that's kind of the thing, is like we can make our top 5, but honestly, you said there's 29 monsters in the game or something. They're all cool monsters. Like this is it's a home run in the monster department.
Yeah, especially when there might actually be 30. I don't know if that 29 was base game or with these 2 that or 1 additional. So I think there might be 30 now with the addition of Mitsuzune. And so they've got, there will be probably close to 40 by the time they finish releasing stuff before the ultimate like rank expansion.
Yeah.
So that's been so yeah, cool. And then is there anything that you're like hoping to see as Monster Hunter this game Wilds continues, or that it like when the expansion comes that you'd like to see?
No, I hope they just continue cooking up fun monsters. If they want to continue the story and the expansion, which I'm sure they will, I'll see what ideas they have. I hope that they I don't know. I hope that they explore something interesting with the expansion story, but I feel like they thought they were doing something interesting with the story that we got. So I don't know. I just want more monsters, and I know I'm going to get that. So I'm easy to please, and I know that I'm going to get what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's basically where I'm at too. Is just like, hey, just keep adding monsters. Like I don't even like I would like to see like some of the more difficult or challenging like versions of monsters come back. Like the arch tempered and that sort of thing, just to kind of like ramp up that challenge for those of us that are like grinding out some stuff some more.
Yeah.
And I am looking forward to just like that ultimate rank where it's like, really stepping up some of that challenge. But a lot of it's just like, oh, hey, I hope this monster maybe comes back. Like Mitsuzune is a great one. I really enjoy Mitsuzune as like a monster. There are some others that it's like, I think there's a special place in a lot of Monster Hunter fans' hearts for like the monster that was kind of the flagship of their first game. So like my first game being World, I really like Nergigante. I really hope he comes back. I know people are wanting Deviljho to come back. I forget the name of it, but there's like a big like lightning wolf that is in like that would be really cool to see come back.
That's if I do have a wish list, because like that's one of the things, like they have a treasure trove of monsters they could bring back from older games. My wish list is more cool, creative ideas for monsters from animals that you might not expect to become monsters.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like we got 2 octopus monsters and I love both of them. That's a weird thing to make a fight out of. Like make a butterfly or something crazy, go nuts.
Yeah.
There's the Doshagama, which is kind of like a mole bear type looking thing. Get weird with combinations of monsters. That would be my wish. And I'm pretty confident they will, because they just the art team, the monster design team, they're always cooking. So
yes,
I guess my wish would be just like, don't just default to more dragons. We have enough dragon or wyverns in the game. So
exactly. And those are the fights that feel the most samey. The like some of those are like, okay, I get it. You're flying.
Yeah, you're not going to believe he has a fire breath attack.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. So what I'd like to do now is just kind of give our brief like verdicts of, we do it on a scale of S to F, like your standard tier ranking system. So you're the guest, Dave. So if you want to give your brief little.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't think about it on a tier. I think I would give it an A as like a critical view, because I do think that like they got to rein in these menus somehow.
Yeah.
And we probably spent too much time. I probably went on too long, but I genuinely think that like for the amount of effort that went into the story and the amount of time that you are expected to listen to people talk in the story, it's just not good. So an A as like a critical view, but an S in terms of my experience with it, because I had a blast playing this. It's, games have a lot more to offer than just quote fun, but this is a super fun game to play.
Yes.
And when I got a review code, and I appreciate that, for a new Monster Hunter game, I wanted fun, engaging monster fights. That is the only thing that I truly wanted, and I got that in spades. So an S as far as my experience goes, for sure. That's probably cheating, but hey.
No, that's totally fine. Yeah. Very similar to Dave, like if you're looking for a like objective critical opinion, listen to Dave. He's got that on lock. And you will have an episode coming out on Monster Hunter
Right,
where
yeah.
you are. So if you want to hear more about it and maybe hear about it from a more objective side of things, go check out his podcast. For myself, if you're listening to this, you know that I like to rank things based on like if I enjoy them, and you know, if you generally tend to agree with my taste in games, you'll probably like this game. If you don't like my taste in games, you probably won't like this game. For myself, I would give this an S. I've put like 130, 140 hours into this game at this point, and I don't see that. Like, it's definitely slowing down as I'm running out of monsters to fight and things to do, but it's not because I want it to slow down. It's more so it's just like I just like at this point I would become the monster just killing things to kill them, you know, like
Yeah.
I would have no reason to be doing it. And it is, you know, Dave's criticisms of it are 100% on point. You know, the story is the best Monster Hunter story, is also still just barely serviceable, ushering you from one monster to the next. Like it does not, they put a lot of effort into it, and it's like, yeah, you know, it would have been fine if it was something akin to Monster Hunter World or Monster Hunter Rise, where it was just like, hey, this monster's bad, go kill it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The menus, like all the streamlining they've done, I think is great. As somebody who's played a lot of older Monster Hunters, it's like, boom, yes, this feels much more streamlined and better. But also, as somebody who can look at it and see, like, yeah, this is still kind of confusing for me, someone who has played multiple Monster Hunters.
Yeah.
I do wish that they would figure out a way to like kind of at least present some of the information in a way that makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
That said, the core gameplay loop, that prepare for a hunt, go hunt the thing, come back, see what new cool armor and weapons you can make. That part of the game they nailed, and that to me is the most important part of the game to nail, and
Mm-hmm.
they, at least in my opinion, did that. So like I said, I would give this one an S. For myself. So but yeah, so thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Like I said, Dave has his podcast, so I want to throw this to you, Dave, and let you kind of plug all of the stuff that you do. And we'll have links for it down in the show notes, the description, wherever, like whatever you're doing, wherever you're seeing this, there will be links to Dave's stuff if you want to go find more about him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, first of all, Dylan, thank you for inviting me to come chat with you. We probably went longer than we expected to, but I mean, this is not our first rodeo together doing a long podcast. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me back here. And so for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm from the Tales from the Backlog podcast. I'm the only host. Every episode is me with a different guest, and we do a different game each week in depth, kind of doing something very similar to what we've done today for this episode, including breaking up non-spoiler talk and spoiler talk. That's a key structural thing about my show. So you can come listen to any episode and know that we're not going to spoil the story until we start warning you that that's going to happen. And so every week is a different game. Trying to think now, Andrew and Dylan have been on the show several times at this point. Most recently, they were both on the show to do an episode about The Witcher 2, I think was the last one that we did.
Yes.
And kind of cool to go back and just like really put that game under the microscope many years after people kind of stopped doing that. So we did that one together. We did an episode about the Bloodborne bosses. We did a tier ranking of them.
Yeah.
That was way back in the day, several years ago now.
Yes.
We were but podcasting children then, or at least I was. And then trying to think, we did an episode about open world games and what makes a good open world together. And Andrew was also on the show for a Nier Automata episode as well.
Yeah.
So lots of crossover between our shows in the past. But at the time you're hearing this, there's going to be like 160 plus games on the show. So
yeah,
go find something that you are curious about and don't want to be spoiled on, or go find something that you've played. And I like to think that in those spoiler sections, we really can like dig down into stories and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you again for having me. I used to do another show called a Top 3 podcast. It's still there. You can go listen to it, but that one's on ice now. because I just don't have time for multiple podcasts anymore. So yeah, that one we just do top 3 lists, and that's a comedy show. So it's a very different vibe from Tales from the Backlog, but it's still out there. You can go listen to it. I think it's fun. That's a top 3 podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. I always appreciate getting to talk Monster Hunter, especially when, a lot of my usual co-hosts are not Monster Hunter fans,
Dropping the ball. Yeah,
exactly. So, I'm thankful that you were able to come on, and this episode wasn't just me talking for, an hour and a half, 2 hours by myself about all the reasons I think Monster Hunter is cool. I think it was a good back and forth. And I really appreciated your perspective on just like all of the Monster Hunter stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so go check Dave out. He's been on our show a bunch as well, usually in From Software related stuff.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of opportunities. You've probably heard him before, but go check out his stuff because it's great. I enjoy going and listening to his episodes on games that I have played because I think there's just so much good discussion around them.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, well, thank you for being on. Thank you, the listener, for giving us your time, and hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, obviously do the things that all creators ask you for, wherever you're listening to this, be it YouTube or Spotify or Apple, review, like, subscribe, whatever it is on your platform of choice. Doing that helps us as a show grow, so that would be great. But other than that, thank you. Get out there, hunt some monsters, and we will see you next time.